Hello, Black Eagles. Welcome back to the Black Eagles podcast. We've got another in-depth analysis of a new signing for you today, and joining me right now is Owynn Palmer-Atkin from BBC Leicester. Owynn, you've of course been following Beşiktaş's new signing, Wilfred Ndidi, as he has played for Leicester for, I believe, the last 8 seasons, since 2016-17, I believe. First of all, let me start off by thanking you for agreeing to come on the show and giving us your insights, of course, on the player. Can you just tell us a little bit about what the reaction is in the Leicester City fandom to the departure of a player that I gather has been one of the more popular players over the last couple of years for the team?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. In terms of Wilfred Ndidi, I think Leicester fans, whilst maybe disappointed to see a player of his quality and his caliber leave the football club, I think there was an expectation that this would probably be the time that he would move on from Leicester City. Has been a fantastic servant, really. Over 300 games, played in some real important ones as well, like the FA Cup final win, in the Champions League, and in other European competitions as well. And I think Leicester perhaps were maybe even a little lucky to hold on to Wilfred Ndidi for as long as they did, because he is a brilliant player, and I'm sure Besiktas will enjoy seeing him in action. So, yeah, I think from a Leicester fan's perspective, disappointed to maybe see him go, but a lot of thanks, I think, for what he did in a Leicester shirt.
Were there any expectations for him to maybe stick around, because he has stuck around in the past despite relegation to the Championship, and even played a big role in their promotion back up to the Premier League? Was there maybe some fans holding out hope that he'd continue to stick around and help them fight their way back up to the Premier League?
Yeah, potentially. I think it would have been beneficial if Leicester could have kept hold of him. But the reality is, I think for Wilfred Ndidi, he was a player who was on big wages, a player who had a release clause, a player that there was still money in, that they would be able to move on and get money in for as well. And when all of those things come together and you're looking to bring the squad down, I think it probably made, as I said already, it made a little bit of sense for Wilfred Ndidi to move on from Leicester City at this stage. But a player who gave, I think, when you look back at his time at Leicester, really gave everything for the shirt, really, and a player that Leicester City will no doubt miss in this season.
Were you surprised at all that there wasn't any more concrete interest from other clubs in the Premier League, perhaps, given the fact that Ndidi at one point was seen as almost the new N'Golo Kante? Obviously, with some injuries and all that kind of stuff in the last few years, it hasn't quite panned out. But I think around to 2020 or so, he had some of the most impressive defensive stats, at least in Europe.
Yeah, and I think actually at one stage when Wilfred Ndidi was at Leicester City, around that kind of maybe 2019 to 2021, he was probably one of the best holding midfielders in the world at that stage. And there was rumours about Manchester United and all these big clubs who may well be interested in taking Wilfred Ndidi away from Leicester City at that stage, and that never happened. And it just surprised me a little that there wasn't a Premier League team that thought that 9 million euros, I think, was his release clause, that would be a good price to pay for a player like Wilfred Ndidi. Plenty of Premier League experience, over 300 games in a Leicester shirt. It kind of, to me, made sense at the very least that a Premier League club or Premier League clubs should be interested. In the end, that wasn't to be the case, and Beşiktaş is the destination. But a player that has Premier League quality, no doubt, and his work in the defensive parts of the midfield are so good. The one area where maybe that we have seen progression over the last few years, but maybe where Wilfred Ndidi falls a little short is in the passing game. But under Enzo Maresca in the Championship winning season a couple of years ago at Leicester, he really improved in that, but doesn't have the range of someone like maybe a Harry Winks at Leicester, who can really pass through the lines. But there's no doubt and no doubting his defensive capabilities when playing in that holding midfield role.
Mm-hmm. And of course, like you said a couple of years ago, maybe considered to be one of, if not, top holding midfielders in the world at the time. But in the last 5 or so years, I think he's missed about 75 matches in total due to injuries. But not a really big injury or anything like that. He has played at the bare minimum 30 matches per season, so it's not like he's missed almost an entire season due to injury or anything. Were these injuries perhaps more the nagging type of injuries that were sort of stop and go and prevented him from returning to his best level? Would you say that's accurate?
Yeah, I think in terms of the injuries themselves, Wilfred Ndidi's never had, as you rightly say, he's never had big injuries that have kept him out for very long periods of time. It's been, I think that one of the more recent ones was groin injuries and hamstring injuries and things like that. So more muscular, that he's able to get over quicker. And as you rightly say too, he continued to play pretty consistently through most of the seasons and has played quite a lot of games really for Leicester City since he signed back in 2017. So actually, I'm not sure whether it was the injuries necessarily that stopped Wilfred Ndidi from reaching his top level, because he was at, like I say, at one stage probably a 60-70 million pound player playing in the Premier League, and was that good. Perhaps he has been a victim of the modernisation of football, and the desire for a holding midfielder that operates in the way that he does has maybe lessened over the years at the real top level, when we're talking about top 6 clubs in the Premier League and big clubs from elsewhere in Europe. Maybe he's more of a victim than that than the injuries themselves. But I think it's good news for Beşiktaş when you look at his injury record, that yes, he's obviously missed games. Every player will pick up injuries in their career and every player will miss games, but he hasn't missed too many for Leicester City, and they're also getting him at a good age as well.
Would you say that he has declined in terms of quality in the last couple of years, or do you think, because that's kind of the narrative I'm seeing online a little bit, that maybe he's lost a few steps? Also on Reddit, Leicester City fans who perhaps think, maybe he's lost a step or two. Do you think that's the case, or is that maybe more down to the fact that Leicester themselves have struggled a lot in the last couple of years?
Yeah, for me, I see Wilfred Ndidi as a player who has again been probably victim to the decline of Leicester City as a football club rather than him personally as a player. And I think players obviously will slide with a football club as well. But in terms of what he is able to do, he's still able to do exactly what he was doing in 2020 and 2021 really, really effectively. When you play him as that holding 6 midfielder, if you want a destroyer in there to go and win the ball back and then deliver that to a ball playing midfielder, he is perfect for that and still does that role to a really, really high level.
Yeah.
When Leicester played in the Championship in 2023-24 under Enzo Maresca, he was actually played as a number 8, and that was more because of the fact that Enzo Maresca wanted 2 ball players in the number 6 positions, and Wilfred Ndidi, with his quality and lack of options elsewhere in the squad, he was pushed forward to play in a high 8 position. But what that did for Leicester in that season was give them a real ability to win the ball back high because of his defensive work and his tackling ability. But he also really developed then. That was the first time we saw his development in terms of his passing game. And actually, like I say, when you have 2 relegations on your CV as a Premier League footballer, it's easy to look at it and go, you know what, maybe this player isn't the same player that he used to be. But as we say, the decline in form from across the entire team in the first season Leicester got relegated, and then a very different squad last season when they were relegated from the Premier League as well, I think it's more of a showcase about where Leicester are as a club rather than where Wilfred Ndidi is as a player.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's quite reassuring to hear, and also, the profile that you are describing is a profile that I think really suits Beşiktaş right now. Beşiktaş have experimented in the last couple of years with more ball playing 6s, but Turkish football and Turkish football culture, the fan culture, like they have certain expectations from number 6. And I think unlike what you're describing, where the top clubs in the world are expecting their number 6s to be capable of playmaking as well, and more more proficient passing wise. In Turkey, the image of the ideal number 6 is still very much that destroyer type, that player that can help dominate midfield physically, that can recover the ball, that can cover a lot of ground, and then just give a simple pass to the playmaker and let him sort out the passing game. That is what the fans expect from a number 6 for the most part, I think. Obviously, if you can combine that with also being an effective ball player, great, but you probably won't play in the Turkish Super League if you have that in your repertoire. So I don't know if you're familiar with Orkun Kökçü, former Feyenoord Benfica player. Beşiktaş just signed him this summer, and he's their top signing of all time at 25 million euros. And he's really a more advanced 8 playmaker, between an 8 and a 10. And then Beşiktaş also have Rafa Silva, who's technically on the midfield, but he's really playing behind the striker and almost playing as a second striker. Do you think that Wilfred Ndidi has in him at 28 years old now to essentially carry the bulk of the workload defensively and allow for those 2 other midfielders to have a lot more freedom to use their energy in the offensive third of the pitch?
I think so. The nickname that we gave to Wilfred Ndidi on BBC Radio Leicester was the firefighter, because he was so good at going around and putting out fires in the defensive area, picking the ball up and moving it on. And he was so good at that for Leicester City. I think he still will be. And those players you just described there, if that's the way that Besiktas are going to play, if they're going to have a 3-man midfield with maybe one player in the 6 and one player as an 8 or a more advanced 8 on the other side as well, he works perfectly, I think, for that kind of position. He will cover the back 4. He's still pretty quick, being able to jump out and deal with wide areas. That's a real strength of his, knowing when to jump and go and deal with, and you support the fullback on the left and the right hand side, but also really strong in the middle as well and defensively, to deal with kind of more central threats. If that's the way that Besiktas are trying to set their midfield up with those 2 more attacking players and Wilfred Ndidi at the base, I think it works perfectly, because that is the fundamental key principles of Wilfred Ndidi's game, is that defensive duty, that holding midfield, a classic number 6 in front of the back 4. And if he's utilised there, it would be great for Besiktas, I'm sure.
Okay. Well, thank you, Owen. I think this all sounds great. One last question, perhaps. In terms of being a goal threat on offensive set pieces, do you think he's the type of player that will score a header on occasion? I mean, I feel that's something that's been one of the biggest deficiencies in Beşiktaş's game, is a lack of offensive headers of the ball, especially last season. They have some defenders that are really good at clearing the ball defensively, but there's a big difference, of course, between if you're in the opponent's half or in your own half when you're heading the ball, because you need to be able to put that ball in between the posts, put it beyond the goalkeeper's reach, stuff like that. And that's not something that every defender has. And the team, I would say, has a little bit of a lack of height in it. Ndidi isn't the tallest, but is he somebody that can be an aerial threat on set pieces?
Yeah, I think Wilfred is 6'2", 6'3", so he in both boxes, both defensively and attacking, will be a threat with headers, I'm sure. What I would say is I wouldn't expect to see him scoring many goals from outside the penalty area or with kind of regular strikes at goal like that. He's not a goal scoring midfielder really, but actually if you're able to, he's a great header of the ball. If you can put it into the right areas, then he will be a threat in the opposition box, as well as his defensive work with his head in the defending areas as well. So yeah, that's something for Beşiktaş to consider, and he will add. It sounds like he's going to add a little bit of height, a little bit of aerial aggression for Beşiktaş as well, which I'm sure will be another string to his bow, really, in terms of where Wilfred Ndidi is at and what he can bring to this side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, indeed. I think profile-wise, he fits the mold that we were looking for perfectly. Hopefully, it will translate to the pitch in good performances. Owynn, thank you very much for coming on. Is there any social media or anything along those lines that you would like to plug?
Well, if you want to follow me, at Owynn PA on Twitter is a place to be, and Owynn Palmer-Atkin on Instagram, really. But I'm pretty easy. You don't need to be plugging anything for me.
All right, thank you very much, Owynn Palmer-Atkin from BBC Leicester. And of course, thank you all for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit that notification bell so you can be notified of any future videos or streams and other uploads. And let us know what you think of the signing of Wilfred Ndidi. Does this sound like the number 6 that Beşiktaş have been looking for? And how do you think that will pair up with Rafa Silva and Orkun in midfield? Thank you and bye-bye.